Hey everyone, Ashley Mayu here with the DRF. We're going to take a look at race number 10 this Saturday at Santa Anita. It's the Grade 3 Monrovia at 6.5 furlongs on the downhill, and it's for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and upward. And this is a great betting race. It is a huge field of 11, and there's a lot of talent in here and some interesting storylines to maybe note once we go through this field. But horses such as Amy C, Big Summer, Legs Galore, Freedom Flyer, that sort of outside is stacked, but also horses such as Canoodling. Elm Drive going to make her return to the races, hasn't been seen since September. So I do think this is a great betting race and certainly one to consider this Saturday. Now let's get to work here. The number 1, Elm Drive, I mentioned, just making her first start of the year. She's been sidelined since September of 2022. We last saw her in the Weather Vane at Pimlico, where she didn't take a lot of respect in that race. She was 8-1, field of 10, and she pressed the pace throughout, chasing in second and tired in that race. Now you go down the page, and the big thing is, can she handle the turf? We haven't seen that from her yet. She hasn't been over the surface, but I have to say, her last 2 works for trainer Phil D'Amato, who has trained her before earlier on in her career, they've been stellar. Very quick works. You can see 58-4 for 5 furlongs, April 3rd, and then 2 works back, 47-2. So she looks really sharp and ready to go. And we have seen some speed from her in the past. You kind of go down the page, and she looks to be maybe a part of the pace scenario here. And maybe in that way, the downhill will play to her advantage. The number 2, Awake at Midnight. This one trained by Doug O'Neill, exits the Grade 1 Beholder Mile, where she finished 6th, beaten by 6 lengths in that effort. The winner, Amore, ran very nice. Funded Dreams was 2nd. Midnight Memories 3rd. You go down the page, she's been in Grade 1 competitions in 3 of her last 4 starts. So for her, this is some class relief. Julie has that 1 turf effort under her belt, but it was actually a good one. Maybe the number wasn't very impressive, but after graduating on debut, she finished 2nd in the Jimmy Durante Grade 3 back in November of 2021. So interesting. They're going to switch things up with her and give her some class relief on Saturday. The number 3, Canoodling, is another one getting some class relief after most recently racing the Grade 1 Gamely at Santa Anita, where she was finished 4th. She was the pace setter in there, and she did tire, but the big thing is that was at 1 1/8 miles. Now, if you go to that effort 2 back, we're going to take a look at that replay from the Grade 3 Wilshire, just going that mile distance on the turf. And she was able to, kind of get her way in here. You can see she's on the front. She's the number 3. The number 1 is Amy C. And the number 7 is Stella Noir, all of which are, fillies and mares she'll have to face once again. But Canoodling at 1 mile can certainly extend her speed and hold her own. And we've seen that at 1 mile. Now the question will be, is she's going to cut back to 6.5, and she's quick. I don't know how quick she is because she is going to cut back in distance, but even if she's not on the lead, I think there's a situation where Canoodling gets a good trip in here and just sits off of it. She'll just have to see if she's able to run off that layoff. We haven't seen her since late May of 2022. The number 4, Tom's Beauty, is going to jump up against stakes competition for the first time in her career, and she's a lightly raced, a 4-year-old filly with just 7 starts under her belt. 3 of those have been wins. She's won actually her last 2 efforts at 6 and 6.5 furlongs, and she's raced very nicely in those. She's been able to press the pace. She's been able to kind of split the field mid-pack early on and make a nice late move, and she's got that versatility. The question is, this is going to be the class test for her. Can she handle against these more, handle herself, I should say, against these more seasoned fillies and mares? The number 5, Stella Noir, we caught her in a replay just a minute ago when we looked at some of her races. Now, she ended up being 6th in the Wishing Well, came back in the Grade 3 Desert Stormer. It was just 3rd best in there. That race was on the main track. She wasn't able to really get a good hold of the footing. I think she's probably slightly better on the turf. I think her record certainly, in terms of wins, she's had more success on the turf. Now, her dirt races by no means are poor, but just looking at her numbers, I would think that she would improve getting back on the grass. Has experience at the 6.5. The big thing is for her, the hotter the pace, the better. When you saw that she was able to win 3 starts back, note those times: 21-3, 42-4. I mean, they're just lightning quick fractions, and that's what she's going to need to be able to kind of beat this group. She's going to need them to go really quick and not be able to kind of sustain their beds on the front end. Number 6 is next. This one's trained by John Sadler. Kirsten Bosch has been an interesting horse to watch, was able to win 2 starts back very impressively in that Grade 3 event, going 1 mile and 16th on the dirt. More recently in the Beholder Mile, tried to make a late move in there, just was unable to do so. And she was stepping up, and she was facing some tough horses in there. Now, she does have a win at Santa Anita on the turf. That's actually how she graduated, but that was going 1 mile and an eighth. So I'm curious to see how she will handle the downhill on that cutback, because for her, it's going to be a significant cutback in distance. The number 7, One Silk Stocking. This one also trained by Doug O'Neill. This is a horse that was 7th last time out at the distance while facing lesser. Prior to that was 4th in the megahertz, which is at a mile. And at that mile race, this horse is actually kind of pressing the pace in there. They didn't go too quick. They went 48 to the half and just was 4th best in there. Had to face Quattrell, who came back to win next out. Baystorm, closing remarks, all really talented fillies and mares in their own respect. Now, her most recent win for One Silk Stocking was 3 starts back, and that was 6.5 on the downhill. She got a beautiful trip that day from Frankie Dettori, was able to just sit a couple of lengths off the pace setters and make one late run and was much the best. So the big thing with her, I think, again, a similar story, and I hate to repeat myself, we just don't know at this level what she's going to be able to do. Because as I get on to these next couple of horses, that's where things kind of get into deeper waters. And one of those horses is the number 8, Amy C, who's been very impressive. She's won half of her career starts. She's going to try to extend her win streak to 3 races in a row now. And we're going to take a look at that most recent win, which, yes, it was back on January 2nd, but just to see the way she wins this race is pretty impressive. She's the number 6. The Freedom Flyer, who she'll face again, is the number 2. And, she's on the outside here. She's still got a horse to her outside, the number 8, Countess Rosina, but she's going to kick on here. And when called upon and kind of the reins are shook at her, she's determined. Other horses are trying to do the same, but she ends up being much the best in here, winning by a length and a quarter. And she got over the ground beautifully, very similar to performance to what we saw 2 starts back. And I think anything to a similar trip, she could be pretty tough in this spot. The number 9, Big Summer. Love the combination here of Carly Gaines and Joe Bravo. They've had a lot of success. They're 25% at Santa Anita. And this horse, she's got this little bit of a streak going where she's either second or first who gets the job done. If you look at her form, it suggests she might have a chance at winning on Saturday, but we'll take a look at her most recent performance. She was second in the Wishing Well, and she was last early on, and she's got a pretty big closing kick. You can see here, the number 1, Stella Noir, the 6 is Big Summer, and the number 8 is Freedom Flyer. And just the way to see this horse kind of just continues to try to kick on here and does a very good job of doing so on the outside. Gets clear here, is just going to miss by a neck. And at this point, when you look at this race, Freedom Flyer's already been on the front for a little bit, and Big Summer just can't get the job done. It's almost a head bob, but it ends up being a neck in the end. This horse loves the turf course at Santa Anita. You go down the page, has really excelled at that 6.5 for a long distance. And I mentioned the combination, always one to watch at Santa Anita. The number 10, Legs Galore, is a 6-year-old mare by Bayern, trained by Phil D'Amato. And she's been so fun to watch over the years. She's won half of her starts. She's 9 for 18. You go down the page, and what do you see? Basically all stakes races, with maybe the exception of 1 or 2, looking at those run lines down the page. And she's been second in her last 2 efforts. Prior to that, it's been a little bit since she's been to the winner's circle, but she is very speedy. So the downhill suits her. She almost got the job done last time out, but Eddie's New Dream was able to kind of get to her in the end. And she was stretching back out after 2 tries at that 5/8 distance. So going to Santa Anita, she had to stretch out to 6.5. I think she could be very dangerous on the front end here. And I know there's kind of been talks of her, of how long she'll be continuing her racing career. So hoping for a big performance from Legs Galore on Saturday. Then rounding it out, the number 11, Freedom Flyer, was able to win the Wishing Well. We saw that performance, was able to kind of get to the lead a little quicker than Big Summer was able to close in, and was able to hold on by a neck. She's had some really great performances at the 6.5 for a long distance. I think they found her sweet spot with that. They tried kind of going longer earlier in her career, and she was just getting a little tired in the end. So the cutback has been perfect for her. Leonard Powell's done a really great job with her. And looking at her last 4, she does have, those 2 wins, both at 6.5. And I like that she was able to, get that stakes win in her most recent effort. Frankie Dettori's been aboard for her last 2 and is back aboard on Saturday. So a lot was said there. 11 horses. It's a great betting race. And looking at this race, I went back and forth. I was torn between the 8, Amy C, and the 10, Legs Galore, but I ended up going with Legs Galore. I think the early speed, she can certainly get to the front if she wants it. And the other big thing is she's been really good off a layoff in the past. She's been able to kind of have a huge performance, with some horses maybe need a start or 2 to get rolling. She is not the case. We've seen it time and time again. So I think, if anything, the time off has done her well. So Legs Galore on top for me. Then I go to Amy C, who mentioned both of her most recent performances at 6.5. She's been very impressive, and she should be kind of splitting that pack early on and making a late round. The pace will be there. I I also have a little bit of interest in the number 3, Canoodling. The big question will be the layoff. She might need a start, but she certainly has the talent. And then rounding it out, the number 11, Freedom Flyer. She's hard to knock. Her last 2 efforts have been at the distance, and they've both been good. But for me, looking to see legs galore in the winner's circle on Saturday.